At first, I want to pay tribute to those two remarkable, brave women who honor us tonight, who join us despite their pain and the martyrdom of their sons. Let's take them as representatives of those of our family members whose support for us, whose insistence that they have every much a right to love us as any other parents have to love their children, has been so important a factor in our making the gains that we've made. And I thank them for sharing their passion and their commitment. Beyond that, this is a moment to celebrate our gains, although we must resist the impulse to be grateful when a vicious and hateful prejudice has for years been allowed to blight the lives of innocent people. No one should expect us to be thankful that the bigots have stopped bigoting. We are glad that it has happened, and we are committed to keeping up this fight, but there are some good things that we can note. First of all, I think it's time that our counter to the policy of don't ask, don't tell was a very simple statement. Don't be stupid. I have been engaged in public policy debates for a long time. I can think of none that were as intellectually, morally, and factually so one-sided. There wasn't a single good argument for this bigotry. And finally, reality has overcome it. I suppose one example were those of my congressional colleagues who were mortified at the thought that straight men might have to take showers in the presence of gay men. I was able to point out to them that as someone who uses the house gym, although recently not as much as I should, I don't know what they think has been going on down there, but I have pointed out to them that in the 30 years I've been using the house gym, after working out, I have not had myself dry cleaned. They've been in the shower with me and they seem to have survived it. All it did was to weaken this country by screening out some of our best people, by causing others who serve to serve with a tension and an uncertainty that clearly undermined their ability, no matter how brave and courageous they were, and led to some people being kicked out. So let's talk now about what's going to happen. First of all, a good sign. During the recent debate on the continuing resolution, the very conservative group that now runs the Republican Party tried to undo health care, and they tried to undo environmental measures, and they went after Planned Parenthood, they went after public radio. Not a single amendment was offered to undo the repeal of this policy. Because it turns out, a good sign, even the bigots ain't stupid. At least tactically, perhaps morally. They know they have no more chance of reinstating don't ask, don't tell, even with the majority they have in the House. But they understand that they have no more chance of reinstating don't ask, don't tell than achieving some other of their prized right-wing causes, like Michelle Bachmann's effort to move the towns of Lexington and Concord from Massachusetts to New Hampshire. There's another very important fact, and I am enormously grateful to the brave men and women who, in addition to voluntarily exposing themselves to the discomfort at best and the life-threatening dangers at worst of military service, were prepared to do that under the threat of this stigma. It is an extraordinary act. of heroism. I was asked once why I was trying to implement the radical homosexual agenda, and I said, I got to admit, I fall short here. Here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to change the law so that we can get a job, join the Army, and get married. Now, anyone who thinks that's radicalism hasn't been paying attention. But the moral to the physical courage that is required of anyone who volunteers, and the patriotism that puts you at a disadvantage in so many ways compared to others, you add the moral courage to be willing to confront this prejudice, and you are all truly heroes, and we are grateful. And here's one more reason we are grateful. Because the success of our repeal efforts, and by the way, I want to just pay tribute, not just to Steny Hoyer, who was magnificent, and to Joe Lieberman and Susan Collins, who helped with their strategy, but to Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi. I will tell you now, because I was there, that there were people, including some people who claimed to be supporters of repeal, who worried that we could not jeopardize the overall military bill and wanted us to sacrifice an insistence on repeal if it meant jeopardizing the overall military bill. And some who were worried that it might jeopardize the ratification of the New START Treaty. And the Democratic leadership said, no, we are going to do this, and you're going to accept it, and then you're going to go ahead. And they called that bluff, and they were right. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. The repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and the integration, the full integration of gay and lesbian and bisexual military personnel, which must come within a few months, and many of us will insist that it does. It is both a cause and effect of a successful fight against discrimination. We couldn't have done it if we hadn't already disproven the stupidities of any gay, lesbian bigotry. But the fact that we have won will further help us repudiate it. 2 years from now, we will be able to point to lesbian and gay combat soldiers and logistical planners and intelligence officers and fighter pilots and people manning our ships. Any suggestion that those of us who are gay or lesbian or bisexual are in any way inferior when it comes to performing the tasks that are so important to our fellow citizens, to the extent that some of that silliness still exists, your experience has already undermined it, and once we have gotten rid of this policy fully, we'll have blown it to bits. So thank you for the blow you have struck for a sensible, humane policy.